Hello, everyone. This is Elisa Baum. I'm GridGain's Director of Product Marketing. I'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar, Supercharge E-Commerce with In-Memory Computing, being presented by GridGain Systems Director of Technical Marketing, Matt Sarrel. Matt, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you, Elisa.
You're very welcome.
So I'm here today to talk about supercharging e-commerce with in-memory computing. And these are the basic agenda of what I'm going to talk about today. I'll go through an introduction, talk about what's changing in e-commerce, essentially like why are performance and scalability critically important in today's e-commerce environments. Then I will talk just a little bit about what GridGain and Apache Ignite are, then go through a survey that we had submitted to GridGain customers, where I've sliced out the e-commerce customers so we can see how they're using the product, and then talk about the rise of in-memory computing, talk about, and then get to use cases for in-memory computing in e-commerce. Again, specifically those that require this unprecedented performance and scale that are offered by in-memory computing. Well, not each use case, but most of the use cases, I then have example GridGain customers, and I can talk about how they're using the product. And then finally, at the end, I'll wrap up with an in-depth discussion of GridGain and Apache Ignite features. So just to tell you a little bit about who I am, I'm currently the Director of Technical Marketing at GridGain. Not really a marketing guy because I'm more techie. I'm like the techie who is good at explaining things, and so now I've leveraged that and gone into marketing. I've had I started my career doing network engineering, application engineering, worked my way up the ladder, director of IT, VP of engineering. I've written for a whole bunch of tech magazines like PC Mag, eWeek. I was an analyst at GigaOM for a while, covering big data. Did a lot of work around NoSQL, so I come to you to present some slightly more technical content. Well, it's still marketing, but it's technical marketing. And you can reach me at matt.sarrel@gridgain.com or on Twitter at msarrel. You can an awful lot of what I do ends up on our blog, and the URL is here. Feel free to contact me if you have detailed questions about our product, or about doing anything really, and I'll find the right person at GridGain, like a product manager or solutions architect, to get an answer to your question. Okay, so if you want to understand what's going on in the world of e-commerce, let's look at the 800-pound gorilla of e-commerce, which is Amazon. They have almost 50% of the entire e-commerce market, and what's actually almost more amazing than just that 46% number is that they have so much more market share. Their next competitor is at 4%. They sold 1 billion items online in the 2016 holiday season, which represents a 9 times order growth from year over year, which is pretty amazing. They processed more than 40 million orders on Black Friday, which works out to 500 orders per second. They shipped between 16 and 18 million packages, which makes the rest digital downloads. Or actually, I guess you could have multiple items in a package. They scaled up with people, too. and they ended up with 200,000 seasonal workers. And I guess actually, just to cut to the chase here, if you look at statistics that the government puts out, you'll see that e-commerce still accounts for less than 10% of all retail US sales. So e-commerce is growing really, really fast, and at the same time, still has a lot of room to grow. So when I look at e-commerce and I try to understand what's really driving technology choices, I think it all comes down to user experience, and e-commerce is highly competitive. I mean, you could win or lose a customer in under 5 seconds. So it becomes really important to make sure that users can quickly find what they're looking for, make changes to product configurations, and buy it. They really need to execute, move stuff through the shopping cart as quickly as possible too. And it's not just performance; it's also performance at scale, right? So your e-commerce performance is great today, and 6 months from now or a year from now, when you have 10 times as many or 100 times as many customers on the site at the same time, performance still has to be just as good. Um, and at the same time, e-commerce sites are being asked to do more. A lot of real-time analytics. This goes towards personalization to make each customer sort of, feel special. Like you don't necessarily have a salesperson standing at the door saying, "How can I help you?" You have a website. The website can't really say, "How can I help you?" The website can provide the information that the customer needs based on the activity the customer has made on the site. Actually, I'm going to keep saying site, but all of this applies to a mobile app as well. And if anything, um, performance and scalability are even more important on a mobile app. Um, and this leads to this next idea, which is that not that many e-commerce entities get to start from scratch. So chances are you're probably dealing with multiple engines built on multiple technology stacks, perhaps hitting a bunch of different backends. This is probably something you deal with every day. And if you look for a whole bunch of point solutions to accelerate them in their individual spots, then you may end up just, making the problem worse because now you've got this like super convoluted technology stack that you need to support. And also, high availability is important in providing consistent performance. You can't have, um, slow response time because you've got a bunch of clusters down or a data center down. You need to have the most effective ways of maintaining consistent performance, and that's typically done through high availability, um, load balancing, and failover features. All right, so what's driving in-memory now? Um, in-memory technology has been around for a long time. Like it was like the minute something got written to disk, someone said, "Hey, we could do it faster by not writing it to disk and keeping it in memory." Except that memory's been really expensive. So now we're at this point where we've got um, web scale applications, um, huge numbers of users, growing numbers of users, massive data sets, growing amount of data, and we've got the Internet of Things, various sensors around generating data as well, millions of ways to track, well, millions might be an exaggeration, a lot of ways to track user behavior, a lot of ways for users to submit orders, like I mentioned before. There's the whole omni-channel real experience. All of that tied together. There's a lot of data, a lot of hugely scaled applications, and at the same time, you have to look at a uh, the decreasing price of memory, and you add that all together, and what do you get? You get increases in the amount of data and the performance that's required, and decreasing memory prices. And hey, in-memory computing is starting to look even better than it looked in the past. Okay, so this little chart from Gartner sort of backs up my claim that in-memory computing is growing. We're looking at $10 billion by year-end 2019, and this is to cover in-memory databases, in-memory analytics, in-memory data grids, in-memory app servers, in-memory messaging, stream processing. Look at all those different categories. Wouldn't it be great if there were one product that could do all of that? Hey, there is. There's an in-memory computing platform. And guess what? Because this is all building up to that, Apache Ignite and GridGain are that in-memory computing platform. So we're talking about one platform that supports data caching, parallel processing, in SQL processing, streaming data analysis. Because we're in memory and we've got rich API support, we can slide in between existing application and data layers with very little modification of existing code. We also we have ACID compliant transactions in memory, coupled with rich analytics support and support for a variety of backends and a variety of application code. And also GridGain and Ignite are deployable anywhere, on-premise, in the cloud, or in hybrid environments. You can build your clusters across multiple locations. You can have clusters in different, separate clusters in separate locations, load balance between them, failover between them. It's all customizable. You can do anything you need to do with the flexibility. So we're talking about a compute platform. It's a highly distributed, clustered environment in memory for computing and transacting, and it's made up of data grid, compute grid, SQL grid. I'll explain what all these things are in more detail later. I'm just setting the tone so that when I get to the use cases, it all kind of makes sense. Now, you can just slide GridGain or Ignite in between your existing application and your existing backend. And this is because of the support that we offer via various APIs, as well as ODBC and JDBC drivers. So you slide this clustered set of grids in between your application and your database. Everything runs in memory. You're getting the performance gains of moving from disk to memory. Everything's always available because of the advanced clustering features that we talked about. Everything's scalable. Again, this is the heart of this is all the distributed clustering. And then we've got some nice features on top of it, like SQL 99, ACID transactions, and support for MapReduce. And you don't have to rip and replace your existing code because of that support as well. All right, so we've got Ignite which is the open source version of GridGain. There's a little bit of history. So the day that Ignite became a project, it was already a mature product because GridGain itself, we started writing all the code for GridGain in 2007, and in 2014 we contributed Ignite to the Apache Software Foundation. So you already had 7 years of development. It wasn't like there were 3 lines of code and we said, hey, we've got a project. So and now we've built on that even more. There are more than 60 contributors, and actually, so we're looking at over 1 million lines of code. So this breaks out the features of Ignite versus the, well, it's not really versus, but so essentially GridGain Enterprise is like a superset of the features that you would get in Ignite. I think what I see as important are, basically a lot of the support, the troubleshooting tools like the management GUI, the monitoring GUI. You get enterprise grade security, full audit trails, stuff like that. Rolling production updates are a key feature, so you can update nodes in your cluster one at a time, transparently, so that the node goes down, but the cluster doesn't go down during the update. So your users don't actually, there's no planned downtime because you can do it while everything's live. And again, it's the support, getting early bug fixes, patches, updates, and upgrades, as well as either 9x5 or 24x7 support. All right, so we've got this computing platform. We've got data grid, compute grid, SQL grid, streaming, Hadoop acceleration, event processing, and here we can see a whole bunch of the use cases that can slot into each grid. I think important for e-commerce would be web session clustering, distributed caching. A lot of customers are using us for distributed caching, pulling together different pieces of product catalogs, like pre-caching graphics, stuff like that. Compute grid, I actually think is a really cool feature because it's distributed parallel processing of compute tasks. So this sort of layers high-speed computing on top of high-speed data access and manipulation. SQL grid is another good feature because now we're talking about fully ANSI SQL 99 compliant grid that you can have data in memory, run ACID transactions on top of that data in memory, and at the same time leverage all of your existing SQL code, real-time analytics, build a nice hybrid transaction and analytics platform there. I'm not going to run through all these. I'm just throwing out some teasers. So GridGain's actually and Ignite are actually really popular already in terms of being in-memory compute platforms. There's been a huge uptake in financial services around, basically like it's unprecedented performance and scale that GridGain and Ignite offer, which works out really well for real-time analytics, market risk assessment, processing trades, like high-frequency trading, high-volume trading, A lot of good use cases too in financial services around fraud detection and risk analysis. Any kind of big data or fast data analytics is going to benefit from in-memory computing. We have quite a few mobile and IoT customers, some wearables customers. Um, Basically, we can do a lot of stream processing, and then like I was talking about, the parallel processing of computations lends itself really well to crunching data around different analytics use cases. And in biotech, there are a bunch of use cases around drug discovery and genome matching. So looking at the survey that we submitted um, around, to our users, we asked a whole bunch of our users last year, what do you use in-memory computing for? And so what I've done for the purposes of this talk is separate out the e-commerce customers. Um, and the uses in e-commerce for in-memory computing were database caching, application scaling, high-speed transactions. Um, Following that, Spark acceleration. Spark acceleration is a big use case of ours with support for shared RDDs. Real-time streaming analysis, database scaling, um, the list goes on. Hadoop acceleration. Let's see. Now, I mentioned before we have some flexible um, scenarios around where you can run GridGain and Ignite. This can be in a private cloud, on-premise, AWS, and Azure. Those are the top places where GridGain and Ignite are run, which is basically what we would expect. Flexible protocol support and language support, Java, SQL, Scala, .NET, MapReduce. Those are the most popular. I would actually expect to see SQL increase in popularity now that we've added the SQL grid functionality. We asked what are the data stores you connect to GridGain or Ignite. Postgres, SQL, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, MongoDB, and Cassandra. Now, I will just point out we have a whole lot of content around using Ignite and GridGain to accelerate MySQL. Just finished a white paper on that. And we also have a whole bunch of content around using GridGain and Apache Ignite to accelerate Cassandra. All right, and then how important are each of these features? Data grid would be tops, compute grid, container support is up there, which I was a little surprised by, but it may make sense given the adoption of DevOps that's taking place. Service grid, streaming grid, ANSI SQL 99 compliance. Again, I think we're going to see SQL compliance move up the list as we've enhanced our already excellent features around SQL compliance, primarily through the addition of DML functionality. And again, I had mentioned Spark shared RDDs, which is actually a hugely popular way of leveraging the performance and scalability added by GridGain or Ignite. All right, so let's turn to the meat of this presentation and look at GridGain's e-commerce customers. Apple, Newegg, Canon, Sony, 24 Hour Fitness, Avis, Intercontinental Hotels Group, Experticity, and Cartera Commerce. So I discuss a bunch of these as I go through the different use cases. So our first use case is looking at real-time personalization and user session management. So you want the site or the app to be able to react to user choices in real time, create location and behavior-based recommendations. So, oh, other people who bought that have also bought this. Or you've just gone into a store and your phone has hit the Wi-Fi, so now we know you're in the store, so we'll push you a location-based recommendation. Obviously, that stuff has to take place really quickly in order for a customer to modify their purchasing behavior to take advantage of these recommendations. And you also need to store session data in real time as well, especially in the case where we're looking at an omni-channel thing. So you need to know, like, oh, did I look that up on my phone and then go into a store because I might want certain content that facilitates that kind of purchase, or was I just browsing the web on my computer at home? Did I browse the web? Did I start browsing on my computer at home and then pick up my phone because I needed to go out, and now I want to know the products that I looked at and buy them from my phone? So that is becoming more and more important, and that has to be done very quickly and correctly. Um, Again, so this is all around serving dynamic content, and that all, obviously has to be done very quickly, and also generating customized pricing on the fly. Like, oh, you bought that? Well, we offer a bundle, so let's just change that price. Um, Customers don't want to wait for that to happen. They want that to happen immediately when they add something to their shopping cart. So how does this get tied together by one of our customers? Let's look at experticity. So experticity creates an environment where lifestyle and consumer brands, 650 or more lifestyle and consumer brands representing more than 4 million products, get connected to brand advocates. So basically, you sign up on the site, you enter a bunch of your interests and your experience, and then the site starts to show you information, and how you interact with that information and those products is all tracked in real time. It's tracked in real time across thousands of concurrent users, and you're provided with more personalized content, so you're getting the information that you need. At the same time, the site is tracking what you're doing and what you're reading and providing that feedback back to the brands so that they can improve their content and leverage their relationship with you as a brand advocate. So this was an interesting piece of business because GridGain displaced another solution for that business. The tech staff at Experticity saw that while what they had was good enough for the number of users that they had, they were approaching a point where it was not going to be good enough. So they had the forethought to go out and start to look at other solutions. They decided that they would get the best performance and scalability from GridGain. There's this great quote from Jeremy Knudsen, the CTO. We need it to work fast and work at scale, and GridGain does. We couldn't do what we do without GridGain, and we're confident we can scale up to meet the growth we anticipate. So, who doesn't want someone to say, our business wouldn't be a success without your product? Right. So looking at high-speed transactions, in some ways, right? Like you can provide all the content you want, and all kinds of bells and whistles around personalization and different features of your site and your app. But at the same time, if you can't execute transactions fast enough to make a bunch of happy customers, it's going to be pretty tough to run a successful e-commerce business. So you need performance and scale across your entire spectrum of site and app functionality. It's a much more complicated problem than what the user sees, right? The user sees, hey, I loaded a page, I clicked add to my shopping cart, I clicked buy. That's it. But, where the developers and the architects behind the scenes see a bunch of different pages, elements like graphics or text, potentially getting pulled from different backends, a shopping cart, all the transactional elements like pricing on the fly, inventory. Inventory can be managed in real time. Shipping information can be managed in real time as well. And payment information, verification, fraud detection. So a user sees, oh, I clicked on that, I'm giving it 3 seconds to be in my shopping cart, and then another 3 seconds to buy it. But there's actually an awful lot going on in the background, and being able to tie all of that together in an in-memory computing platform can bring the performance and scale that you need. So there's another use case of real-time analytics. And what's gotten really interesting is that we keep adding sources. So you're no longer really talking about conducting analytics on a single data source. You've got multiple sources, probably both internal and external, and at the same time that you're increasing the number of data sources, increasing the amount of data, and you're required to run the analytics faster. A big goal here is upselling and cross-selling, and we're looking at user session analysis, providing behavior-based recommendations, location-based offers, looking at trending items, and also having the ability to push out spot promotions as necessary. This includes both transactional. You need a platform that supports transactional and analytics in its architecture, and speeding one thing up but not the other is probably not going to solve your problem in the long run. It might solve today's problem, but it's not going to solve what you really need to do in order to have a successful e-commerce site. I think real-time analytics is where big data meets fast data. You can process, you can crunch more and more numbers, but how fast you crunch them is also important. And again, like I mentioned, you have to do this across a bunch of different data sets and different data structures, some of which you may have control over and some of which you may not have control over. And what I've talked about so far is how this plays out in what the customer sees, but on the other side, you're also going to be doing your own business intelligence, where you'll need dynamic and customizable reporting, and data visualization and all of that. And a lot of that has to take place in real time too. So now you're looking at a solution that has high-speed transactions and high-speed analytics. So here's an example of a real-time analytics e-commerce customer. They wouldn't let us use their name, but it's okay, because the point here was that they needed to move off of their existing, well, they needed to accelerate their existing uh, RDBMS. They needed SQL support. They needed ad hoc query capability, which is another thing that GridGain and Ignite support. They had a need to get 2 terabytes of data cached in memory and run against that. And at the same time, they also had a lot of internal customers, like I was just talking about on the last slide, constantly running reports. They looked at our competition, including Terracotta and Gemfire, and in the end, they chose GridGain because GridGain demonstrated the ability to seamlessly integrate into their existing homegrown application and add the ad hoc query capabilities they needed while accelerating both the application and the RDBMS backend. Another use, actually we see this use a lot, this caching product catalogs. So basically you're now looking at pulling a lot of different objects, images, sometimes video, text from different product catalogs and serving them all up very quickly. And for this, you'll need intelligent caching across multiple data structures, different locations, different backends, also some kind of smart pre-sorting and prefetch that's rule-based and totally customizable. And you'll also want to look at the cache management features such as expiration and eviction. And these are all things that you get with DataGrid. So bringing all of these e-commerce use cases together, we get a customer that you may have heard of called Newegg. They're the 11th largest retailer in the US, an online consumer electronics store, and they were all running on top of Oracle Coherence, and they were looking at doing in-memory analytics, and they wanted to use an open source product to do this. They ran a proof of concept with GridGain, and GridGain outperformed Oracle and demonstrated the best SQL support, the best fault tolerance, and the best transactional consistency. Security was also an important feature as well. And so Newegg basically re-engineered their online consumer electronics store to include the Ignite distributed in-memory compute platform in between their database and all their application code. So how did they do that? They looked at the GridGain in-memory compute platform or data fabric and all of its components. I've gone over some of this before. This is more functional. So you've got Java support, .NET support, C++ support, SQL support, and you can hit a variety of different backends like SQL, NoSQL, or Hadoop for different use cases. So one of the important things here is the in-memory data grid, which is inserted between the application and database layers. This moves the disk-based data from the RDBMS, the NoSQL or Hadoop databases, into RAM, which is an immediate performance improvement right there of probably, about 1,000 times, I think, is a number that we use. Essentially, we've got an in-memory key value store. Can replicate and partition data caches across different nodes, elastic on-demand scalability to add new nodes, distributed in-memory transactions can be ACID compliant. This is tunable, so you can establish the balance between consistency and speed that your organization needs. Web session clustering, both on heap and off heap cache storage, which is important from a performance point of view. We have support for a bunch of different RDBMSs with read through and write through right behind. So you can do all your work in data grid and then just write to the database after everything's done, or you can write to the database after each step. It all depends. It's all flexible. It all depends on your requirements. So we offer support for all the most popular RDBMSs like Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and IBM DB2. NoSQL support includes MongoDB, Cassandra, Redis, and others. And Hadoop support via MapReduce, Hive, Pig, and Apache Spark. So in-memory SQL Grid is the horizontally scalable, fault-tolerant, ANSI SQL 99 compliant portion of GridGain and Ignite with support for all SQL and DML commands, such as select, update, insert, merge, delete. So this really takes SQL support to the next level, where now it's not just about running queries, it's also about manipulating your data and adding new data as well. So now you're talking about a mature in-memory solution to supplement, or in some cases, perhaps even replace a disk-based RDBMS. SQL Grid also includes support for distributed SQL, and geospatial support is built right into the product. You don't have to add anything. And you communicate, all the communication to SQL Grid is done through ODBC and JDBC APIs. In-memory compute grid enables parallel processing of compute tasks that can get pushed around to different nodes. It's actually pretty cool stuff. So there's adaptive load balancing, automatic fault tolerance. You can schedule jobs. You can basically anything that you can code, you can run in compute grid, including various checkpoints. The whole thing is built around a pluggable SPI design, and compute grid also offers a direct API for fork join and MapReduce processing. There's an in-memory service grid, which provides control over how many instances of the service should be deployed on each cluster node and guarantees continuous availability of all deployed services in case of node failures. So you can look at node singletons, cluster singletons. You can automatically deploy services on node startup. You can also deploy services based on like any other factor that you could code, like some kind of error checking spawns a service, or we have what is basically like a cron-like scheduler to run services distributed across nodes at certain times. And Uh, this is a load balanced and fault tolerant way of running and managing services across the grid. In-memory streaming and continuous event processing are also some pretty cool features. So you're looking at a continuous stream of data comes in, and you can establish windows for processing and run either one-time queries or continuous queries. Um, the event workflow is totally customizable. That's the what you do with the streaming data, and this is used for real-time analytics. You can index the data as it is being streamed in, so that you can run extremely fast distributed SQL queries against your streaming data. Hadoop acceleration is another important feature of Apache Ignite and GridGain. Um, and you can do this in a variety of ways. You can either layer GridGain and or Ignite on top of your existing disk-based HDFS, and use it as a caching layer where we offer read-through and write-through. You can also import all of your data into the Ignite or the GridGain file system. And on top of that, we will also use Compute Grid to run in-memory MapReduce. So you're looking at minimum a 10x performance improvement over existing Hadoop installations. And then to top it all off, we offer the Visor monitoring and management console, which will show you the performance of individual nodes, the performance of clusters, performance of processes. One of the things you can run ad hoc queries through the management tool, which becomes really interesting because then you get all kinds of statistics about how those queries run, and you can use that information to tweak where your data lives within the cluster. So this is it's like monitoring on steroids. So you're not just like monitoring, looking for errors. You're monitoring with a distinct path towards performance improvement. And that wraps up everything that I have to say about using GridGain or Apache Ignite to support e-commerce by building an in-memory compute platform. Again, we're doing this for increased performance and scalability, given the needs of our customers to have a high-performance experience with real-time personalization, content personalization, high-speed transactions, tracking user session state across a variety of platforms. Real-time analytics is also critical, both for how that affects the users and also the insight that your company gets into your customers. So thank you very much. I encourage you to email me with questions, matt.sarrel@gridgain.com. Follow me on Twitter @msarrel. Follow GridGain on Twitter @GridGain. Also look for the hashtag GridGain and the hashtag in-memory computing. And of course, feel free to join us for more information on gridgain.com. Look at the resources section. There are a lot of white papers and webinars there, and also our blog, which is updated regularly, and just about every kind of technical insight you might be looking for somehow flows through our site and our blog. So thank you very much, and I'll turn this back over to Elisa.
Thank you very much, Matt. Well, we hope to see you on a future webinar. Matt will be back every month to talk about in-memory computing and how it applies to various industries. The next one he is doing is on software, and that is going to be on February 22nd. So with that said, thank you so much for your time today, Matt, and we hope to see the audience on a future show. Thank you, Matt.